It was my 29th birthday, and I got kicked out with a cupcake and a garbage bag. It's strange how birthdays used to mean something. Balloons, laughter, maybe a few badly wrapped gifts, but mostly just a feeling that the day was yours. But this year, it didn't feel like mine. It felt like an expiration date. The house smelled like cheap vanilla candles, dollar store stuff Janice picked up last minute, the kind with the wicks that fizzle out halfway through. One lonely balloon bobbed at the ceiling, slowly leaking air. The kitchen table was set with paper plates and those plastic forks that bend if you use them on anything tougher than pudding. Janice stood by the sink, wearing that apron she never actually used for cooking, pressing a cupcake into my hand. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," she said without looking at me. Her voice had that bright tone she used for guests, not for me. Rex didn't bother singing. He stood with his arms crossed near the fridge, like a bouncer waiting for closing time. "Make a wish," he said. I stared at the cupcake. It didn't have a candle. No flame. No chance to blow anything out. Just frosting that looked like it had been spread by someone in a hurry and a gummy ring stuck in the top, like they couldn't even spare the 50 cents for a candle. I forced a breath. "I wish," I started, then let it trail off. "You don't have to say it," Janice interrupted quickly, already turning her back. No one clapped. No one smiled. There wasn't even music playing. The silence was thicker than the frosting. After I took a small bite, because what else do you do? Rex cleared his throat. "We've been thinking," he said, and I could already feel my stomach nodding. "Here it comes. You've had time to recover. From the accident. From everything. And we need space. Lacey's kids are coming up for Easter. You know how tight things are." I blinked. "Wait, are you saying?" "We need the room," Janice said sharply. "You're strong now. You'll land on your feet. But I've been helping, groceries, the bills. With our money," Rex cut in. "Credit cards under our name." My heart sank. I opened my mouth to argue, but something in their faces, stone, unmoved, told me it was no use. Janice reached under the counter and pulled out a faded Target bag stuffed with what looked like my old sweaters. She didn't even hand it to me, just set it down on the floor, next to my shoes, like a doggy bag after a bad meal. "No hard feelings," she added, without looking at me. I stepped out onto the front porch in my slippers. The spring air was chilly, still clinging to winter's leftovers. A neighbor walked by, gave me a polite wave, and kept going. I wondered what I must have looked like, woman on the porch, holding a plastic bag, eyes wide with disbelief. I dug into my purse and pulled out my phone. It was buzzing from a message, "Lacey. Lacey, hey. Hope they're spoiling you today, face blowing, kiss, love you, sis." I stared at the screen for a moment, then laughed under my breath. Bitter. Hollow. Spoiling me? They gave me a party without candles and tossed me out before the frosting hardened. My instinct was to check my bank account, just to see what I had to work with. Maybe get a motel for the night. I opened the banking app and froze. Zero. Zero in checking. Zero in savings. I clicked to expand transactions. There it was, multiple charges from Amazon, Apple, Walmart. Stuff I didn't buy. A whole new coffee machine. A set of patio furniture. Kids' clothes I didn't recognize. I checked the credit card next. Maxed out. Some of the charges had shipping info, my home address. Their address. My chest tightened. They used my recovery as a way in. While I was healing, stuck inside, they'd asked for help with groceries, said put it on your card and we'll pay you back. They never did. And now they drained everything. There was a kind of humiliation in that moment I can't put into words. Like you think you're poor, but you're not, you're plundered. Like your trust got mugged in broad daylight. I sat down on the porch steps, the cupcake still in one hand, the plastic bag in the other. I looked at the closed door behind me, the door to the house I'd grown up in. A door I used to walk through with scraped knees and college acceptance letters and stories about bad dates and bigger dreams. Now it was just closed. Not slammed. Just final. It wasn't just eviction. It was erasure. They didn't just want me out. They wanted me gone. A car passed by, splashing through a puddle in the street. I stood up slowly and started walking, not because I knew where I was going, but because standing there felt like accepting it. Maybe I was starting over. On my birthday. With a cupcake, a garbage bag, and no savings. But if they thought that was the end of my story, they didn't know me at all. The next morning, I woke up on a borrowed couch in the corner of Denton's community center. My neck ached from the angle. The hoodie I'd used as a blanket didn't do much against the cold tile floor underneath. Still, it was better than waking up in that house. The world looked different when you had no place to go. Every open cafe felt like a waiting room, every park bench a temporary solution. I ended up in the public library just after noon, dragging my bag like a suitcase with a broken wheel. Mrs. Grant, the head librarian, gave me a polite smile when I asked about borrowing a laptop. She didn't ask questions, just scanned my card and handed over a slightly sticky Chromebook. Wi-Fi's stronger near the windows, she said gently. I thanked her like she'd offered me shelter in a storm. I sat in the farthest corner, tucked behind a shelf of self-help books. The sun was filtering through the dusty blinds, catching motes of dust in the air. I opened the browser and logged in. My hands trembled more than I'd like to admit. First, my bank account, still empty. Then, the credit cards. Except, there were 3. I only remembered 2. The third one had my name, all right. But the charges were even stranger. Transactions going back 2 years. Tool sets from Home Depot. Bulk groceries. A medical recliner. I'd never even seen these things, let alone bought them. I clicked through the statements, 2 cards maxed out. The third close behind. A new email pinged in. Subject: payment overdue. Credit alert. I clicked it open, barely breathing. My credit score had plummeted. Not just dipped, dropped. Below the threshold for a decent apartment, a used car loan, even a student loan deferral. I scrolled back through my mental history like a Rolodex. And then it clicked. When I was in college, Rex had asked me to sign up for a card to build credit. He'd smiled and said, "We'll never use it, sweetie. It just helps to have something in your name." At the time, I thought it was grown-up trust. Now I saw it for what it was. Access. He didn't just take my trust, he weaponized it. I looked down at the Chromebook keyboard, my fingers suddenly numb. There's something nauseating about realizing your parents were the ones who did this. It's not like a stranger hacked me. It wasn't some scammer with a foreign accent and a burner phone. It was my family. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, the cursor blinking in rhythm with my heartbeat. Then I clicked the Contact Us tab and called the number on the back of the most abused card. A customer rep named Derek picked up, too chipper for what I was about to say. "I think there's been fraud," I said. "There are transactions on this account I never made." He asked the usual questions. I answered them automatically. Birth date. Last 4 digits. Mailing address. Then he said, "Actually, all of these purchases are shipping to your home address. Is that correct?" I clenched my jaw. That was my home address. Not anymore. He paused. "I understand. Unfortunately, since the account is in your name and there's no police report filed, We can't freeze the card without a direct request or legal documentation. I swallowed. Then I want it frozen. Now. You'll lose access to any auto payments and remaining balance. I don't care. There was a silence on the other end, the kind that made you feel like the world was deciding something behind your back. Then Derek said, "All right. You'll receive a confirmation email within the hour. Do you want to set up a new password or?" I ended the call. I didn't need another password. I needed my life back. I pulled up the bank app, the screen reflecting back a version of me I didn't quite recognize, bags under my eyes, a rawness in my expression that hadn't been there before. I scrolled to the Manage Cards section and found the second one. The big one. Freeze card, the button read. Simple. Just 2 words. But pressing it felt like stepping off a cliff. I hovered my finger for a moment, then tapped. A soft click. A confirmation message. That was it. No bells, no applause. Just a quiet moment where something shifted. For the first time in years, I'd drawn a line. They couldn't buy patio sets or gaming consoles or bulk diapers with my name anymore. Whatever control they had, whatever financial leash they'd held onto, it just snapped. I leaned back in the chair and exhaled. The library buzzed softly around me. A kid somewhere coughed. Pages turned. Someone's phone vibrated faintly. It wasn't much. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even justice. But it was a beginning. They had erased my birthday, my name, my money. Now I was taking back the smallest piece, my credit. Mrs. Grant passed by and gave me another kind smile. "Everything all right, dear?" I nodded. Getting there. She didn't press. She just kept walking, the wheels of her book cart squeaking softly down the aisle. I turned back to the screen, not sure where I'd sleep tonight, not sure what tomorrow would look like. But I knew one thing. The next thing I did would be for me, not for people who only loved me when I paid for it. "Your dad's card just got declined," said Lacey, half laughing, half curious. I was sitting in the corner booth of a donut shop that didn't care how long you stayed if you bought coffee. The air smelled like fryer grease and artificial maple syrup. My coffee was lukewarm, but it came with unlimited refills and a plug socket currency for the homeless, or nearly so. The call came just after noon. Lacey's name popped up on my cracked screen, and out of some stupid reflex, I answered. "Hey," she said, already mid-giggle. "You'll never guess what just happened." I didn't reply. Just waited. I'm in the checkout line with Dad. He's buying like $70 worth of steaks and cheese sticks, and his card gets declined. Like, not once. Twice. He's yelling at the cashier like it's her fault. There was a beat. "Anne, I dunno. Did you do something?" I stared out the window. It had started to rain lightly, spring drizzle, soft enough to make everything look blurry. "What do you mean?" I asked. She lowered her voice. "Mom says you froze the cards. That you're mad or something. But now they're freaking out. They said you locked the family out." That true. There it was. The shift. Concern wrapped in curiosity, guilt dipped in sugar. "They used my cards, Lace," I said quietly. "On things I didn't buy. On debt I didn't create." There was silence on her end. I imagined her in the checkout lane, maybe holding a bag of groceries, watching Rex fume while a teenager at the register tried not to cry. "Well," she finally said, "you know they didn't mean harm. They've always helped you too." Help. That word again. Help like charging $600 on patio furniture? Okay, that wasn't great, but you don't have to make a scene. Now they're saying they can't even get groceries. I looked at my own tray, just a single donut I hadn't touched. "And how do you think I've been eating?" I asked. Lacey didn't answer. A few minutes after we hung up, the voicemails started coming in, one after another. Voicemail 1. Marley, what the hell do you think you're doing? You're sabotaging your own family, that's what. We fed you. We housed you. This is how you repay us. Voicemail 2. Call me back. Fix this. Unfreeze the damn card. You don't get to ruin our lives out of spite. Voicemail 3. Static. Then yelling in the background. She'll learn what it means to be cut off. I didn't listen to the rest. I just saved them. There was no apology. No attempt at understanding. Just rage. Like I'd flipped a switch and suddenly they saw me as a threat instead of a daughter. I sat frozen for a while, watching my reflection in the darkened window. I didn't look defiant or angry. I looked tired. Tired of being the financial backup plan. Tired of being called ungrateful when I finally said no. And then came the text from Janice. Janice, if you still love me, don't do this in front of everyone. Not, let's talk. Not, I'm sorry. Just a performance note. For someone so obsessed with sacrifice, she had a funny way of demanding silence when the spotlight turned her way. I stared at that text for a long moment. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the App Store and downloaded a voice recording app. Then I backed up every voicemail, every screenshot, every bank transaction. I uploaded them to cloud storage under a folder titled Proof, Personal, because this time I wasn't going to be the only one carrying memories. I was going to carry receipts. In the past, I might have deleted those messages, erased them like they didn't happen, tried to make peace, gone crawling back with some soft excuse. But not this time. This time, I wanted the truth saved somewhere permanent. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about rewriting the story they'd told about me for years, that I was helpless, lucky to be under their roof, too soft to make it on my own. They used my name for years. Now I was taking it back, one file at a time. Outside, the rain picked up. People hustled by, umbrellas bouncing. I stayed in the booth, sipping stale coffee, watching the little spinning wheel as the files uploaded one by one. Each file was a piece of the puzzle they'd tried to hide. The debt, the lies, the manipulation. Lacey had called me out, but I wasn't the one hiding anymore. They wanted silence. I was done being quiet. The walk to Mr. Brandt's house was shorter than I remembered, probably because I hadn't taken it in years. His old ranch-style home still sat 2 doors down from my parents' place, same cracked driveway, same lopsided mailbox with a sticker that read, U.S. Marines retired. It was quiet out. No lawnmowers, no kids on bikes. Just the smell of fresh-cut grass and distant barking. I had a tote bag slung over one shoulder, filled with things I didn't want to keep but couldn't throw away, mostly trinkets from when I was a teenager. A few books, a framed photo from high school, and a small gardening tool set Mr. Brandt had given me when I used to mow his lawn for cash. I thought I'd just leave it on his porch, maybe scribble a note. But the garage door was open, and the radio was playing low some old country song I half recognized. The smell of engine oil drifted out, mixed with coffee and something sweet. He looked up from under the hood of a dusty Ford and smiled. His white t-shirt was streaked with grease, and he wore his usual khakis and suspenders, one clip hanging loose. Mr. Brandt had always looked like he walked out of a black and white movie. Well, I'll be, he said, wiping his hands on a rag. The prodigal neighbor returns. I laughed, a little tighter than I wanted. Didn't mean to bother you. Just thought I'd drop some things off. Old stuff. Don't leave just yet. I've got coffee in the pot and pie from Mary Ellen's bakery, still warm if you don't dawdle. I hesitated, But my stomach voted before my brain could veto. Sure, I said. I've got time. Inside the garage, he had a makeshift sitting area, 2 lawn chairs, a beat-up cooler as a table. He poured coffee into 2 chipped mugs and handed me a slice of peach pie on a paper plate. We sat in silence for a while, the AM radio murmuring behind us. Then he said, almost too casually, "Saw your dad yelling outside the grocery last week. Something about a frozen card." I looked up from my coffee, and I figured if that girl's smart enough to lock her doors, maybe she's finally waking up. I didn't say anything at first. I'd spent so long wondering if it was just me, if I was ungrateful or selfish or broken in some way for feeling used. But here he was, confirming it like it was obvious. "You're not crazy," he said, as if he could read my silence. "You're just finally seeing it." My eyes stung, but I blinked fast. "You think so?" "I know so," he replied. "You remember that time I gave you $50 to mow the yard, and your mom showed up 15 minutes later saying you owed her for groceries?" I nodded slowly. I saw her take that letter too. Bank envelope. Slid it right into her purse when she thought no one was looking. I gripped the mug tighter. "Didn't know what to do at the time," he went on. "Didn't feel like my place. But maybe that was wrong. Sometimes silence helps the wrong people." I looked at him, this old man in grease-stained clothes, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something other than shame or anger. I felt seen. "Thank you," I said softly. He waved it off. "You need someone to back you up? I'll write a statement. Or testify." Hell, I'm retired. I got time and very few people to impress. I laughed, more out of surprise than humor. "I mean it," he said, suddenly serious. "If you're gonna go after M legally, start collecting now. Every email, voicemail, letter. Keep a paper trail." I nodded. "I've started. I've got files saved already." "Good girl." He paused. "Don't wait for permission to protect yourself. Especially not from folks who count on you staying quiet." We sat a little longer, finishing pie and coffee. The sky outside had turned a soft, pale blue, like it couldn't decide if it wanted to rain again or not. As I stood to leave, Mr. Brandt added one more thing. "It doesn't take much to be a good neighbor," he said. "Just one person who's willing to speak up when it counts." I smiled, the kind that came from somewhere deeper than politeness. "You were that person today," I told him. He just tipped his mug and said, "Better late than never." As I walked back toward town, the weight on my shoulders felt a little lighter. Maybe I still didn't have a roof of my own, or a steady job, or a clue what tomorrow looked like. But for the first time in a long while, I had a voice. And someone had finally said they heard it. My grandma left a will. I never read it until now. The old warehouse behind Mr. Brandt's house used to be a feed store, then a machine shop, and now, well, it was mostly a graveyard for things people didn't know where else to put. Mr. Brandt let me stash a few boxes there after Grandma passed. Said it was safer than leaving them at my parents' house, something about mold in the basement and rats that read wills. I hadn't touched the boxes in years. Maybe I didn't want to. Grief makes clutter out of everything, and I couldn't bear the idea of finding her handwriting and not hearing her voice. But something had changed. Maybe it was Mr. Brandt's coffee-stained honesty. Maybe it was my own anger finally curdling into clarity. Either way, that afternoon I asked for the spare key, unlocked the warped metal door, and walked into the dust. The air was stale, the kind that sticks in your throat. I tugged the chain on the bare bulb overhead and began sorting through boxes. Old linens, a tin of recipes, photo albums with curling corners. And then I saw it. A hardcover copy of Anne of Green Gables. The spine cracked in the middle, just where Grandma and I always left off. I lifted it like it might fall apart. Inside, tucked between 2 pages, was an envelope. My name written in cursive, the ink faded but unmistakable. I didn't breathe as I opened it. Inside was a short note, just a few lines. Marley, if you're reading this, it means they kept you from it. Don't let anyone make you forget your worth. The savings are yours, untouched. Ask Rena. Love always. Grandma. Under the note was a photocopy of her will, a page marked with yellow highlighter, a separate savings account listed under my name, held in trust, set up when I was 16. I sat down hard on a paint bucket and reread it 3 times. She knew. Even back then, she knew. Grandma was never one to start fights, but she saw things. Quiet things. The way Janice took over doctor visits. The way Rex borrowed my birthday checks. The time he laughed and said, "You'll never know what money feels like till you have to give it up." She saw all of it and left me something they couldn't steal. The next morning, I took Mr. Brandt's old laptop to the library and found Rena Holtz's contact info. She was still practicing law in Scranton. I didn't call. I emailed. Less than 2 hours later, she responded. Yes, the account is still intact. No withdrawals. You're the sole beneficiary. I can transfer access immediately with proof of ID. I stared at the screen. My fingers hovered, then tapped out a reply faster than I could think. I sent her my ID, filled the form she attached, and clicked send. It felt like throwing a rope across a canyon. By afternoon, I had access to the account. And it was more than I expected. Not millions, but enough. Enough to rent a place, buy groceries, start something, anything. Enough to not crawl back. Then came the next step. I opened my joint bank account, the one my parents used like a family debit card, and hit transfer all funds. Every last dollar I had scraped together in that account was sent to the trust Grandma left. I closed the tab, closed my eyes, then opened the bank app and hit close account. Done. For the first time in my life, no one else could spend my money. I sat in the library's quiet corner, surrounded by whispering students and the soft shuffle of pages. And I whispered to myself, so low no one could hear. Let's see how they live without me now. It wasn't spite. It was resolve. It wasn't punishment. It was release. The thing about legacies is, people think they're about stuff, houses, rings, savings accounts. But the real legacy Grandma left me wasn't money. It was this feeling, humming under my skin, that someone saw me and planned ahead. That she trusted me even when others didn't. And in that warehouse, under a broken light bulb, she told me what no one else dared to say. You matter. Even when they act like you don't. Lacey texted, Mom's freaking out. There's no food. No power. Dad's blaming you. The video came at dawn, before my second cup of coffee. The sun hadn't even cut through the morning fog, but my phone buzzed like it had something urgent to say. It was from Lacey. I hesitated, then tapped it open. Grainy footage filled the screen. Our family's cluttered kitchen, the one I'd once spent a full summer repainting. Mom stood with her arms crossed in front of the refrigerator, its door hung open, exposing bare shelves and one wrinkled apple rolling on the bottom tray. Behind her, Dad paced in circles, slapping the edge of the table with his palm and cursing loud enough to make the sound crackle. No power, Lacey's text read next. No groceries. They just realized the accounts are gone. I stared at the video longer than I should have. Part of me felt cold. The other part, strangely calm. They weren't starving, not really. The fridge was empty, yes, but that house had more frozen meals stuffed in the basement freezer than most families keep for emergencies. What they'd lost wasn't food. It was access. Instant gratification. The luxury of treating my paychecks like refills. A few minutes later, my phone rang. Lacey's name. I didn't pick up. She called again, then left a voicemail. Marley, listen. Mom's crying. Dad's losing it. They say the card isn't working. The lights shut off in the guest room. He thinks you changed something with the utilities. Can't you just talk to the bank? Tell them it's a mistake. A pause. I know things have been tense, but this is still your family. I didn't respond. Not yet. Instead, I pulled on my hoodie and stepped outside. The spring air was brisk, but I needed to move. To walk, to clear my head, to let the memories settle without letting them root. That house had drained me for years emotionally, financially, even spiritually. Every time I bought groceries, they asked for the receipt. Every time I paid a bill, they added another name. And every time I tried to pull away, I was met with phrases like, after all we've done for you, you think the world owes you something. You'll never make it on your own. That last one echoed the longest. Back inside, I brewed another cup of coffee and finally opened Lacey's most recent message. This one was short. Mom says what you did was cruel to your parents. I stared at it for a while. The cursor blinking under her sentence felt like a dare. I typed slowly. I didn't do anything to them. I just stopped funding it. No reply. But another message came, from an unlisted number this time, anonymous, no name, no photo. Don't let me see you again. You'll regret it. There was no mistaking who it came from. The words carried the same cadence as Dad's threats when he used to stand in doorways, arms folded, daring me to leave and never come back. But this time, I wasn't 13. I wasn't locked in my room, crying into a pillow, wishing I had the guts to pack a bag and run. This time, I was holding the receipts. Literally. I'd saved every voicemail, every transaction screenshot, every email since the moment I froze the card. And now I wanted answers. So I walked downtown to the local branch of Blue River Savings and Trust, the same bank where Dad once opened a joint account for family emergencies. The one where he used to make me co-sign. The teller recognized my last name immediately. Her smile faded before it fully formed. I need to request a full transaction history, I said calmly. All activity related to joint accounts under Rex and Janice Marlowe, including credit card authorizations from the past 5 years. She blinked. Are you sure you want to file that? Yes. She hesitated, then handed me a form. If you're claiming potential misuse or unauthorized activity, we'll start a preliminary review. It may take a few weeks. I've got time. As I signed the paper, a quiet sense of resolve bloomed in my chest. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't even payback. It was the beginning of something fair. Outside, the wind picked up. I zipped my hoodie higher and crossed the street toward the diner, where the scent of bacon and fresh biscuits reminded me of Sundays long ago, before expectations, before debt, before guilt was served with every meal. Not everyone knows they're a charity case until the donations stop. And some people, when they lose the spotlight, will burn the whole room just to be seen again. Mrs. Grant tagged me in a post. Some parents don't deserve their kids. I was at the laundromat, watching my last 2 quarters tumble around with a load of thrift store sweaters, when my phone started lighting up like slot machine cherries. Notification after notification from Facebook, an app one rarely opened anymore because it was full of wedding photos and ads for commemorative plates. But Mrs. Grant, the librarian who never used exclamation points, had tagged me. That alone felt urgent. The post sat in Denton's most popular group, Neighbors of Denton. No politics, just caring. Someone, screen name Reading Retiree 67, had written a long paragraph over a pastel background. Not every child who leaves home is ungrateful. I know a young woman who covered her parents' bills for years, utilities, groceries, even medical debt, only to be kicked out on her birthday. Some parents don't deserve their kids. Below it, Mrs. Grant had commented first. I witnessed this for years. Silence helps the wrong people. I felt my pulse in my ears. I hadn't told her to post anything. I hadn't even known she knew that much. Yet there were already 100 likes and climbing. I scrolled. Comments poured in like pennies in a fountain. Kathy R. saw the dad at BevMart every Friday buying top-shelf bourbon with someone else's card. Henry W. Mom showed up at my boutique last winter, maxed a credit card on designer coats, bragged, my daughter's got it covered. Shirley P. thought it was odd a grown man let his child pay for a root canal. Now it makes sense. Every line was a flashlight flicked on in a dark room I'd been made to navigate alone. My throat tightened, not with sadness this time, but with relief I hadn't expected to feel. Then my phone buzzed with a private message from Lacey. Lacey, Marley, this is getting out of hand. Mom's mortified. Dad's downright livid. Please ask your little fan club to stop. I stared at her words. The phrase little fan club landed like a slap. As if truth-telling were a hobby. As if I'd asked for any of this attention. I didn't answer. Another comment popped up, this one from a name that gave me pause. Bill Rafferty. Dad's old banker. I handled their mortgage for 8 years. Always wondered why late fees cleared so fast while other essentials stayed overdue. Sounds like we're connecting dots at last. One sentence, but it hit harder than all the others combined. A banker was basically a human receipt printer. If he suspected wrongdoing, things were about to get official. I refreshed the post. Over 400 shares now. Denton only had 12,000 people, which meant half the town would see this before dinner. This is happening, I thought, both terrified and strangely weightless. Back at the dryer, I folded my sweaters with unhurried care, as if I could iron calm into every crease. When the last sleeve was tucked, I headed for the door, but another notification chimed, this one an email. Subject, Potential Civil Action. Follow-up. From Rena Holtz, ESQ. Marley. Based on new public statements and corroborating witnesses, we may have grounds for misappropriation of funds and financial coercion. Call me when you're free. This could strengthen your case considerably. I exhaled so hard a nearby college kid glanced over. Outside, the evening sky was pink lavender, the color of store-brand frosting. Pretty, but too sweet. I slid my phone into my pocket and walked toward Main Street, feeling Denton tilt ever so slightly in my favor. The community had spoken, and their words felt like brick and mortar under my feet. The story was no longer a private ache, it was public record. And public record, I was learning, is where justice begins. In the back of the closet, I found the jacket Mom never let me wear. The sun filtered in through crooked blinds, warming the tiny studio apartment with a light that made everything feel brand new, even the cracked tile floor. My belongings fit into 4 boxes and a duffel bag, but for the first time in my life, I had space. Real space. The kind nobody could revoke with a slammed door or a guilt trip. I sat on the edge of my mattress, still on the floor, nursing a mug of instant coffee and letting the silence wrap around me like a weighted blanket. No voices behind closed doors. No footsteps thudding down the hallway. Just the hum of a neighbor's vacuum and a world that, somehow, didn't expect anything from me this morning. I stood up, stretched, and began unpacking. One box held framed photos from better days. Another held kitchen basics, plates, mugs, a single frying pan that had seen better breakfasts. But the third box, that was the one I hadn't touched in years. It had moved with me twice, shoved into the back of closets, always sealed with thick packing tape and emotional weight. The marker label had long faded, but I knew what it was. Marley, memory stuff. I cut it open. Old journals, birthday cards, mismatched gloves, and then, folded beneath an embroidered pillowcase, the leather jacket. Black, soft, and heavier than I remembered. It still smelled faintly of lavender and something woodsy, like my grandma's back porch after a rain. My throat caught. I'd found it once, years ago, hanging in the back of my mother's closet. When I'd asked about it, she'd snatched it away, muttering, "That's not for you. Let me keep it clean." I never saw it again. Until now. I slipped my arms into the sleeves. It fit better than I expected, like it had been waiting for me to grow into it in more ways than one. I turned to the mirror hanging awkwardly from a wall hook and stared at the woman looking back. Not just someone's daughter. Not someone's emergency fund. Me. Marley. Standing tall in my own space. My phone buzzed on the windowsill. Text from Clara, new coworker. "Hey, there's an opening for an independent auditor position here. Want me to put your name in?" I smiled. Clara worked at the firm I'd just started temping at, a place where people said good morning and meant it, where no one watched you like a hawk for clocking out 1 minute early. It wasn't glamorous, but it was decent. Honest. I typed back quickly. "Yes, please. I'd love that. Thank you." Then I looked around. The walls were still bare. No rug. No table. But I put my hand on one wall, cool, textured plaster, and whispered, "This is mine. And no one can kick me out again." I breathed in deep, let the jacket wrap around me like armor, and walked to the door. The morning sun caught the shoulders of the coat as I stepped outside. It wasn't heavy anymore. It felt earned. Let them fall apart, I thought, turning the lock behind me. I'm just getting started. They took out a second mortgage in my name, without telling me. I didn't believe it at first. The screen flickered under the fluorescent lights of the local bank branch, and Mr. Callahan, kind but visibly nervous, turned it slightly toward me. "You're listed as a co-signer on this secondary mortgage," he said. "Issued 4 years ago." My name, my social security number, their house, a loan I never applied for. "I never signed this," I whispered, throat dry. He tapped the keyboard again. "It's digitally filed. There's a scanned signature, looks like yours." A chill crawled up my back. My parents had always been good at making things look normal. Just like the time my mom handed me an envelope in college and said, "Sign this so we can get your dad's insurance squared away." I was 20, tired from finals, and didn't read it. Maybe that's when it happened. "Can you check the actual document?" I asked. He nodded, clicking through. The file opened, and there it was, my old signature, shaky, from years ago. But not on a job form. On a loan contract. A second mortgage. On a house that was never mine. I felt like I was going to be sick. "I'd recommend freezing all future activity tied to your SSN," Mr. Callahan said gently. "You're not the first person to deal with this. Especially not with family." That word stung more than it should have. After leaving the bank, I called Rena Holtz. She answered on the second ring. "Forgery, coercion, maybe both," she said sharply after hearing everything. "They leveraged your identity." We'll need to investigate who processed it and how the signature was obtained. But Marley, this could be criminal. I stood outside the building, the breeze sharp against my skin. I didn't even know this was happening. That's exactly the point, she said. They were counting on that. I filed the freeze request that afternoon. It felt like writing my name in stone, finally declaring to the world, and maybe to myself, that I wasn't going to let this slide. That night, my inbox pinged. Subject: leave it alone. Body: if you expose this, we will not let you off the hook. No greeting. No signature. No doubt. They knew I'd seen the documents. They knew I'd started digging. And they were scared. I didn't reply. I just forwarded it to Rena and then sat quietly in the glow of my laptop, the sound of the refrigerator humming faintly behind me. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't scared. Just done. There's a particular kind of betrayal that comes when someone uses your name like a pawn. It's not just fraud. It's a violation of self. And when that someone is your own parent, you stop asking why. You start asking, how do I stop it from happening again? Freezing my credit didn't erase the past, but it protected the future. It was the first document I signed for myself in a long time. And this time, I read every word. Dad texted, "Come over. Let's talk. It's still your birthday week." I stared at the message longer than I should have. It had been a week since they shoved me out with a cupcake and a trash bag. A week since I stood on the curb, stripped of more than shelter, stripped of trust. Now here it was, lit up on my phone. "Come over. Let's talk. It's still your birthday week." Birthday week? That felt like a cruel joke. Still, something in me was curious. Not hopeful, just curious. I drove to the old neighborhood, but parked around the corner, behind the house where my childhood lived and eventually betrayed me. I didn't walk up to the porch. I stayed in the car, windows cracked, engine off. A symbolic standoff, if there ever was one. Dad came out about 10 minutes later. Slower than I remembered. He looked thinner, maybe older. Or maybe I was just seeing clearly for once. He didn't smile, just walked up to my passenger window and knocked. I rolled it down halfway. "You're really gonna stay in the car?" he asked. "I'm exactly where I need to be," I replied. He glanced back at the house like he was checking to make sure no one was watching. "Your mother's on video call. She wanted to talk too." "How convenient," I said. "She couldn't make it to the eviction party last week either." He sighed and pulled a phone from his jacket. Janice's face popped up on the screen. Her makeup was done, lips pursed in a show of dignity. "Marley," she started. "Can we stop this nonsense? Why let something so trivial turn into hatred?" I laughed. "I couldn't help it. You maxed out credit cards in my name, forged a mortgage, and kicked me out. Which part was trivial?" "You're exaggerating," she said quickly. "It was never meant to hurt you. We were in a tough spot, and we thought you'd understand." "You thought I wouldn't notice," I corrected. Dad leaned in. "Look, we're family. We've had our rough patches, sure, but we always come back together." "No," I said firmly. "You use people and call it family." He shook his head like a man who had to endure the misfortune of having a daughter with boundaries. "I'm trying here, Marley." "Trying what?" "To gaslight me into thinking this was normal." He hesitated, then reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a slim white envelope. He passed it through the window. "What's this?" "Just something to make peace. It's a simple agreement." I opened it and scanned the top line. Voluntary waiver of liability and financial claims. My stomach turned. "So, this is what your version of reconciliation looks like?" "It's just so we can all move on," Janice's voice chirped through the phone. "Funny," I said. because I am moving on. But not the way you think. I folded the paper neatly, held it for a beat, then handed it back. I'll sign nothing, except the affidavit of fraud. Dad's face fell. Janice hung up without a word. I rolled the window back up slowly, eyes never leaving his. He didn't knock again. Just stood there for a moment, as if unsure whether to beg or curse, then walked back toward the house with shoulders that suddenly looked smaller. As I pulled away, I thought about something I once heard in a documentary, how some families don't raise you, they harvest you. This wasn't about hatred. It wasn't even about revenge. It was about truth. About drawing a line where love ends and exploitation begins. For the first time in a long time, I was the one holding the pen. For the first time, I said it out loud. They stole from me. And they knew it. There's something strange about walking into City Hall when you're not paying a parking ticket, but preparing to hand over your own story as evidence. I clutched the folder tight to my chest. Inside were copies of every email, every bank receipt, every voicemail I'd saved. Grandma's diary was tucked in, too, right between the signed application they'd faked and the audit request I'd filed. It felt like I was carrying a life that had been lived twice, once by me and once by the version of me my parents created on paper. Rena had called ahead, so the receptionist knew my name. She wore glasses on a beaded chain and had a voice like someone who'd seen too many people like me walk through those doors. She didn't ask questions. Just handed me a clipboard and said, "Take your time. They'll call you back." The waiting area smelled like toner and lemon cleaner. I sat in the farthest seat, facing the door, and tried not to bite the inside of my cheek. A poster about financial abuse was taped to the bulletin board next to the county tax notice. I stared at it. Miss Camden. My name, spoken clearly by a man in a gray jacket, jolted me upright. I followed him down a long hallway that didn't feel nearly wide enough. The interrogation room was small. No windows. Just a long table, a few chairs, and a plastic pitcher of water. Rena was already seated, her laptop open, glasses low on her nose. "You ready?" she asked gently. I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. The judicial officer across from me introduced himself and explained that this wasn't a trial, it was a declaration. A first step. But it mattered. "Start at the beginning," he said. "And just tell it how you lived it." So I did. I talked about the birthday party that wasn't. The cupcake with no candle. The garbage bag full of my old shirts. Then I talked about the cards, how I didn't even know they existed until my credit dropped. The job application I supposedly signed at 19. The second mortgage. The savings that vanished. The bank that shrugged because you're still legally responsible. I laid out each receipt. Played one voicemail. Showed the statement from Grandma's lawyer confirming that the inheritance had gone untouched until now. At some point, the officer stopped writing. He just looked at me. Rena tapped the folder gently. "We're also filing for forensic review on all joint accounts involving her name, starting from 2018. The officer nodded. "We've been seeing more of these. Parents. Guardians. People using love as an excuse to violate trust." I thought of Grandma's words. "When you speak up, others dare not ignore you." I had always assumed my story would sound messy, like a family spat. But when said out loud, without the weight of guilt or obligation, it sounded clear, legal, real. When we were done, the officer stood and said, "This is now on the record. A financial investigator will contact you within 2 weeks. If further evidence appears, please notify us immediately." Back in the hallway, the receptionist handed me a copy of my declaration. Her eyes met mine, and she said quietly, "You're not the first person to report this kind of thing." I exhaled something that had been stuck in me for years. By the time I got home, the envelope was already in my mailbox. No return address. Just my name in neat cursive. Inside, a printed letter on heavy paper. At the bottom, the name of an attorney, one I recognized from a law firm my father had bragged about once at a barbecue. "Dear Ms. Camden, we represent Rex and Janice Camden. Our clients would prefer to resolve this matter amicably and privately before legal proceedings commence. We request a meeting to discuss mutual interests and potential agreements." It didn't say sorry. It didn't admit anything. It just hinted, politely, that if I walked away now, they might be willing to talk. I folded the letter in half and placed it beside my copy of the affidavit. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about truth and the silence that let people like them operate for so long. And I wasn't staying silent anymore. I finally bought myself a birthday cake. One with my name spelled right. The bakery smelled like cinnamon and buttercream. I hadn't stepped into one in years, not for myself, anyway. Birthdays had always been family-managed productions. I showed up when told, smiled when prompted, and ate whatever was served. Even when the cake said Mary instead of Marley, I was expected to shrug it off. "It's okay to order it wrong," Mom had said once. "Just eat it." But this time, I stood at the counter and the young woman behind the glass asked gently, "What would you like written on it?" I paused for a second longer than I meant to, then said clearly, "Marley." Just Marley. No extra names. And make it neat. She smiled. "We can do that." By the time I brought the cake home, the sun was low, casting golden lines through the window blinds of my new apartment. The little place was still half empty, books and boxes, a rug rolled up in the corner, but it felt more like home than that entire house in Denton ever did. I set the cake down on the wooden table I'd picked up secondhand from Mr. Brandt's cousin. The soft yellow light in the room made everything feel warmer, quieter. Safe. I peeled the lid off and smiled. "Happy birthday, Marley D." D for Diane. My middle name. The one my grandmother gave me. The one they never used unless it was for paperwork they'd forged. This time, I chose to include it. Because now it was mine again. I lit one single candle in the middle and stood back. I didn't make a wish. I didn't have to. My phone buzzed with a video call. "Lacey," I debated answering. Then I did. Her face popped up, framed by a messy bun and the kitchen tiles behind her. "You actually did it," she said, eyes widening at the cake. "You're finally the host of the party." "I guess I am," I said, a little surprised at how good that felt. She hesitated. "Mom and Dad got something in the mail today. From the county courthouse. They're freaking out." I nodded. "They'll be fine. Or they won't. Either way, that part's not my problem anymore." Lacey blinked, but didn't argue. "You look peaceful." "Feels strange, doesn't it?" I smiled. Being peaceful. After we hung up, I sat down and took the first slice. The frosting was thick, the vanilla rich. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Every bite was a reminder. I get to decide how I'm celebrated. I get to decide what I answer to. Just as I licked a bit of frosting off my finger, another buzz lit up my screen. It was a message from Karen, one of the senior analysts at the firm. "Karen, Team Audit, National. Hey, Marley, saw your notes on the branch fraud case. Impressive work. We're building a national auditing task force. Would love to have you. Interested?" I stared at the message for a second, then exhaled softly. Life wasn't just continuing, it was opening. Not everyone gets to start over with cake and an offer. But I did. and I wasn't going to waste it. I set the plate down, stood up, and looked at the candle, now burned halfway. No one gets to rewrite my name, I said quietly. Or my story. I blew it out. As the soft curl of smoke rose into the air, I heard a ping from my inbox. It was from Rena. Subject: Case status: Camden versus Camden. Body: the judge has approved the fraud filing. Subpoenas will be issued within 48 hours. I didn't smile. Not exactly. But I felt the corners of my heart lift a little. I had bought my own cake, said my own name, made my own truth visible. For the first time, I had something worth celebrating, not because someone handed it to me, but because I claimed it. The judge asked, "Why didn't you come forward sooner?" I said, "Because I thought it was love." The courtroom wasn't grand. It had no soaring ceilings or dramatic lighting. Just beige walls, wooden benches, and a worn carpet that whispered every footstep. Still, it felt heavier than any space I'd walked into before. I sat at the front, next to Rena, a notepad in my lap that I didn't plan to write on. Across the aisle, Rex adjusted his tie like it was choking him, and Janice dabbed her eyes with a tissue she'd folded too neatly. They looked like strangers dressed up as parents for the day. The room was quiet, filled with the hushed tension of townspeople who'd come to observe. A few I recognized. Mrs. Grant sat near the back, Mr. Brandt just a row behind her, arms crossed like he was ready to testify if called. "All rise," the bailiff said. And then the judge walked in. He looked down at his papers, then glanced over his glasses at me. "Miss Marley Camden," he said slowly. "Thank you for being here." I nodded. My voice was still stuck in my throat. The hearing began with the basics: verification of documents, formal reading of the complaint. Rena spoke with clarity and a practiced calm. She handed over the financial records, the voice memos, the bank statement comparisons, and the forensic handwriting reports. Then Rex stood. "She's confused," he said with a scoff. "She's always had trouble with memory and responsibility." "We didn't steal anything. We helped her stay afloat." Janice sniffled. "We're her parents. Isn't it a crime now to try and keep your child from failing?" The judge leaned back. "So you admit to managing her accounts without her explicit permission?" Rex stammered. "I mean, we assumed she wouldn't mind." Janice added quickly, "And the loans were to pay for family needs." "You think food pays for itself?" Rena didn't even blink. "Did she sign those loan agreements? Or were her documents used without knowledge or consent?" Rex turned red. Janice suddenly found her tissue again. The judge looked at me. "Miss Camden, why didn't you come forward sooner?" My breath caught, but I stood up. My hands trembled a little, but my voice didn't. "Because I thought it was love," I said clearly. "I thought letting it go was forgiveness. I thought protecting them was what daughters were supposed to do." A silence fell across the courtroom. "But love doesn't leave you homeless on your birthday. Love doesn't max out credit cards in your name and tell you to be grateful. Love doesn't take and call it parenting." I turned slightly, looked toward Rex and Janice. "And most of all, love doesn't lie and then ask to be trusted again." The judge tapped his pen thoughtfully. "Ms. Camden," he said at last, "based on the documents presented, the court believes there is sufficient evidence of financial coercion, potential identity misuse, and familial fraud. I will authorize the continued investigation into all accounts listed." Janice gasped. Rex stood up as if to argue, but his attorney pulled at his sleeve. "Further," the judge continued, "if criminal intent is confirmed through bank and witness records, this may proceed beyond civil court." The room buzzed faintly. Whispers. Shuffling. The weight of it settled into my chest. Not panic, but clarity. Like something cracked open and let light through. Afterward, as the hearing adjourned and people filed out, Rena leaned toward me and lowered her voice. "They'll reach out," she said. "Probably with some offer. Try to settle before this escalates." I looked at her. "What happens if we don't settle?" She tucked a file back into her briefcase. "Then we go all the way." I stared at the door through which Rex and Janice had just disappeared. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't hate. It was accountability. And I was finally ready to walk all the way through. They mailed me a check. No note. Just numbers. The post office still had the same flickering light in the back corner and the smell of old cardboard that clung to every envelope like a memory you couldn't quite place. I hadn't been there in weeks, not since the hearing. But today, Emma had offered to walk with me after work, said she needed stamps, and I figured I'd check my box just in case. "You never know," she said, elbowing me lightly. "Maybe a fan letter." I laughed. Fan or subpoena. Could go either way. I twisted the key and opened the little box. Bills. A coupon booklet. And one plain envelope, thick and heavy, with no return address. Emma peeked over. "That one looks serious." I held it up. No markings, just my name printed in block letters. My stomach flipped. We sat on the bench outside, just under the chipped blue mailbox. The wind was soft, the sun setting behind a grocery store sign across the street. I opened the envelope. A check. $43,000. No memo. No signature I recognized, just the banking line reading, from Personal Settlement Trust, Denton County Fund Transfer. I stared at it, my pulse oddly calm. "That's the exact number you mentioned," Emma said. "From the misuse, right?" I nodded. She leaned back. "Closure. If you want it." But it didn't feel like closure. It felt like a bribe that came too late. Like someone trying to rewrite the ending with cash. I called Rena. "They think this changes the terms?" I asked. Her voice on the other end was measured. "They think you'll interpret this as restorative. If you cash it, the argument could be made that you've accepted settlement, at least informally. And if I don't? Then you're still in control." After we hung up, Emma was still watching me. "What are you going to do?" she asked. I didn't answer then. I waited until I got home. My apartment was quiet. The city's glow filtered in through the sheer curtains. I lit a candle on the table, not for a birthday, not for celebration, just to center myself. I took out a sheet of paper, wrote in black ink, no flourish, no decoration. "To whom it concerns." I wanted respect, not reimbursement. Marley Camden. Then I folded it, slipped it into a new envelope, placed the check inside. The next morning, I mailed it back to the postmark listed on the bank's clearing stamp. There was no drama, no speech. Just the weight of knowing I had said no to silence, no to pretending money could undo years of being disregarded. Later that day, a new email popped up in my inbox. Subject: Women's Financial Safety Conference. Featured story request. From Director at WFSUSA.org. The message was brief. "Marley, we read the recent coverage of your case. Your courage has sparked conversations we've waited years to have. Would you consider sharing your story as our keynote guest? We'll cover travel and lodging. We just want your voice. Director Clara Reyes." I sat there, staring at the screen, the cursor blinking like it was daring me to believe this wasn't a fluke. Maybe this was closure. Not the kind that fit in a check, but the kind that opened a door. Because dignity can't be mailed. It has to be claimed. I never wanted to be the center of attention. But sometimes, silence protects the wrongdoer. I had never been on a stage like this before. The lights were dim, just a small room in Austin, metal folding chairs, and a pale purple poster on the wall with bold letters. Stop Family Financial Abuse. I sat backstage, clutching a piece of paper that had been crossed out many times. Not because I didn't know what I was going to say, but because for the first time in my life, I was allowed to speak without asking permission. Marley, a gray-haired woman with an organization badge, bowed slightly. Are you ready? I nodded, standing up, feeling not like I was stepping onto a podium, but out of the shadows. When I took the microphone, the room was eerily quiet. There were probably 100 people sitting, middle-aged women, immigrants, even young mothers with babies on their laps. They all looked at me, without judgment. Waiting. Hello, I began, my voice trembling slightly. My name is Marley, and this is the first time I've told the story of my life in my own words. I started from the beginning, the day I was kicked out of my house with a birthday cake in the wrong name. The credit cards I didn't know I had. The times I was forced to sign papers that later turned into debt. And the late-night calls, accusations, blame, crying, begging, all in the name of family. I used to think that if I endured long enough, if I kept quiet, things would work out. But no. Silence only makes wrongs seem right in the eyes of others. I paused, looked down at the paper, and folded it. No script needed. No one is born to be a walking ATM. No one should be forced to love with their wallet. And no one should be considered unfilial just because they want to keep their own name. A woman stood first, then two, then the whole room. The applause wasn't as loud as in a movie. It was slow, steady, and then it turned into sobbing from a few rows back. Someone came up to hug me. No questions asked, no reason asked. I wish someone had told me this 20 years ago, she whispered. I don't know how long I stood there. I only remember that when I got off, I saw Clara, the organizer, waiting with a clipboard. Texas State University just called, she said. They want you to speak at the home economics department next month. What do you think? I smiled, so softly I didn't even realize I was smiling. I thought I was just a family failure. Turns out I'm a lesson. That evening when I got home, my phone rang. A text from Lacey. They're selling the house. Getting ready to leave Denton. I didn't answer. Not angry, not happy. Just sat down at the table, watching the yellow light fall gently on the wooden surface. I wanted them to understand. Now I just wanted them to leave. This year, I planned my birthday. For me, not for them. The morning sun glinted off the surface of the lake, casting soft ripples of gold across the water. A light breeze carried the smell of spring grass and espresso from the cafe patio where I stood, adjusting the little paper flag on my cake. It read, Happy Birthday, Marley D. For the first time in my life, I chose the name. I chose the cake. I chose the people. I chose everything. The lakeside cafe wasn't fancy. Just a long wooden table, string lights, and a small speaker humming acoustic guitar covers. But it was mine. I reserved the table myself. I picked the playlist myself. I even bought the floral paper napkins because the sunflowers reminded me of Grandma. Emma, my coworker, walked up balancing 2 cups of iced chai. You actually look calm. That's a new one. I laughed. Guess I finally ran out of reasons to panic. Guests trickled in, people from the conference, Mrs. Grant from the library, even Mr. Brandt sent a card through someone from town. No family, just chosen people. When the cake was brought out, a simple vanilla one with real buttercream frosting, no misspellings, no forced candles, I didn't cry. I didn't feel hollow. I felt seen. The people around me didn't know my entire past. They just knew I was someone worth singing to, and they did. After the applause faded, I cut the first slice myself and held it up. Here's to getting older, freer, and never forgetting my own name again. Laughter. Emma clinked her cup to mine. You're a damn force now. Right then, my phone buzzed on the table. A picture from Lacey. No caption. Just a house, the old house, with the for sale sign removed. Empty windows. Clean yard. The kind of clean that felt like a goodbye. I locked the screen. I didn't need a message. The silence was enough. It didn't feel like loss anymore. It felt like release. As I passed out cake slices, a woman near the end of the table stood up, hesitating with her plate. She looked maybe 50, wearing a modest blouse and tired eyes that had seen too much. Excuse me, she said gently. I didn't mean to interrupt. I heard you speak at the seminar. My daughter, she just got out of something very similar. Would you consider mentoring her? I froze. Not in fear. In awe. Because the question wasn't about me anymore. It was about what came next. I'd love to, I said. No one should walk that road alone. We sat back down as the afternoon sun started to fade behind the trees. There was laughter, humming, clinking cups, and even some off-tune singing when the guitar player tried Jolene. But through it all, I just sat quietly for a moment and breathed. I used to think healing was forgetting. But now I know it's remembering without hurting. It's sitting in the place that once made you feel small and realizing you've outgrown it. That birthday, I didn't just celebrate being alive. I celebrated being mine. I'm Marley, and if you've followed my story until now, thank you. It's not easy to speak about the kind of wounds that don't leave bruises on the skin, but linger in your bank statements, your sleepless nights, and the way you flinch when someone says family. Looking back, this journey wasn't just about reclaiming my finances. It was about reclaiming myself. The truth is, sometimes the deepest betrayal doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the people who once tucked you into bed, who told you they loved you, then quietly signed your name on things that were never theirs to claim. What touched me the most was realizing that healing doesn't always look like forgiveness. Sometimes it looks like boundaries. Sometimes it's a quiet birthday with your name spelled right. Sometimes it's simply saying no more and meaning it. And you? Have you ever felt like you were erased by the very people who were supposed to see you? Have you ever had to choose between keeping peace and keeping yourself? If this story reminded you of something in your own life, I invite you to leave a comment below, maybe just a #1 if it hit home. Or tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to know who's out there listening. Your voice matters too. If gentle, honest stories like this speak to you, don't forget to subscribe. We have more journeys to share, more voices to lift. You're not alone, and you never were. Thank you for staying with me through all 16 chapters. From my table to yours, with a heart full of peace and a slice of real birthday cake, I wish you freedom, joy, and the strength to never shrink again. See you in the next story. Dove.